Hello? Yeah. So the one I sent today is probably the link that surpasses all other links, because there's 18 different links on that one I sent you today to just a whole lot of online help and different translations, different texts, different things that it'll do, and we'll look at that before we're done today. Do you have an interlinear New Testament?
I do.
Okay.
I don't have it with me, but I do.
No. Well, I think it might be good if you've got one to bring it next time, and or a laptop or whatever device you have that may have it in it.
I have to bring my magnifying glass.
Oh, for your interlinear?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about having it on a laptop or a tablet, is that you can make it bigger.
Yeah, but I like actual books.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, I've been buying e-books, and I love them because you can search for stuff.
I don't do books.
Huh?
I don't do e-books.
Yeah.
I buy actual books from Amazon and Costco.
Yeah, after I've read a book and I'm thinking, oh, I'd like to go back and find what he said about this or that, especially if they're ones that are in depth into the scriptures and talking about different passages of scripture and stuff like that. I want to go back and say, what did he say about that? I can search the whole book. I've got an 1,100-page book that's it's called Final Destiny or something like that, and it's about the kingdom of God, and he just goes all the way through the Bible. And in the back of his book, he's got just page after page after page of scripture references.
Yeah.
But I bought the ebook copy because I can just go search it, and it has all of them right there, and I can just click on each one and go right to that spot. So it's the cat's meow for me. So, well, let's go back and review the. I just noticed here an email from Linda. Not going to be at class tonight. My husband committed me to something that he just mentioned to me.
Yeah.
So we didn't go over worksheet 3.1, and so let's go over that just to make sure that we've answered every question that you have. Are you there? Worksheet 3.1?
Yeah.
Okay. So the following are a series of articles in the order masculine, feminine, and neuter. So this is just the chart, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't tell you which one. So A is which gender? I mean, which mood? Which case? There we go.
Genitive.
Huh? Genitive. Genitive. Plural. Okay, genitive plural, and B is
Genitive singular.
genitive singular, and C is
Dative singular.
dative singular. D
Use accusative singular.
yep, accusative singular. E is
Accusative plural.
accusative plural, and last F.
Accusative plural.
Oops. They can't both be accusative plural. It's dative.
Dative.
Tois, 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 tais, tois, tus, tas, ta. Yeah, F is dative plural. Excuse me. Now let's see if you can recognize the grammatical description of the article. Okay. So A is feminine singular case,
Dative.
dative. B is, excuse me?
No.
dative.
Yep, it's dative. B is plural nominative / accusative. What gender?
Neuter.
Neuter, okay. And then high, feminine nominative, plural. Exactly. And then tus, masculine plural, accusative. Tois is plural dative, and what gender?
Masculine or neuter.
Masculine or neuter. And then ton is masculine accusative singular. Okay.
Has anybody ever calculated Greek nouns, what percentage are masculine and what percentage are feminine and neuter?
I have no idea. Never heard that one.
Well, there's something for you. Some new thesis.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah, I think I want something with a little more depth to it than that for a thesis. Okay, number 3. Let's go one step further. The following are a list of some very simple English sentences with one article underlined in each sentence. So, the boys hit the ball. What article did you put in there? Hoy. Very good, because boys is what case? I mean, what part does it play in the sentence?
Nominative.
But in English, what would we say that?
Oh, the noun.
Subject?
It's the subject. Yeah. They're the ones who are doing the action. B, same action. So it's high. The high girls. And then the girl hit the ball. That would be what for the?
Hey.
Hey. And the ball hit the boy. Now, what part of the sentence is boy?
Direct object.
Direct object, so it'd be in what case?
Accusative?
Accusative.
Is it tone?
So it's ton. Yeah. And then E, the ball hit the girl, same thing, only it's tain. Accusative feminine, singular. And the ball hit the girls.
Toss.
Yep, tus tas ta. Very good. Well, here's some more. The notary, here we're back to the notary. The notary validated the affidavit for the, and so what part of speech is deputy?
Maybe the dative.
It would be, yes, it'd be dative, but indirect object. Yeah. So it's the indirect object, which would be the dative. The notary validated document for the jury, so another dative, only he tells you that jury is neuter. So, but it's exactly the same because neuter dative is, same, it's the same in masculine and neuter, to, te, to, right?
Yeah.
The jury viewed the affidavit of graft for the judge, and so affidavit is what in the subject here? Direct object, so it's in the what case?
It'd be tain.
Tain, but what case is it?
Accusative.
Accusative, so accusative feminine. The deputy of the jury, so what case is this?
Genitive.
Genitive, because it's describing the deputy. Okay? Yeah, I don't even know if we've learned that. But genitive is the case of description. So you could also translate it the jury's deputy, the jury's possessive. You could use a possessive pronoun there, and it would be in the genitive as well. So then the notary, masculine, of the court validated the affidavit, and the notary is what part in the sentence? Subject. Subject, and so it would be in what case?
Nominative.
Nominative. The judge heard the plea of the defendants. Okay? And again, what part of speech is this?
Indirect object?
No.
That's a prepositional phrase.
It is a prepositional phrase, but it's wow, again, did we learn this?
We kind of did. And I can't remember because it's been so long ago. We
Yeah.
went over this one in class before you left, like before we did this assignment. And what I wrote down here is that you said that was an indirect object.
Oh, it did.
But I questioned that
Yes.
because I thought it was a prepositional phrase describing the plea. And so I thought it should be genitive. And so I'm confused on that one.
Yeah, so I've lost it. That's L, right? The judge heard the plea. No. The judge heard the plea of the two defendants. Is that of the defendants? Is what we're talking about? Yeah, I have dative plural there, dative masculine plural for the answer, and I don't have an answer sheet. I had.
You have that as dative.
No, did I say that? I meant genitive, tone.
Okay.
I have tone. And it's just, we did go over that, but we didn't, I'm trying to, that would have been lesson 3. So, in here, of the, yeah, so on page 3-4, bottom of the very bottom graph, diagram on page 3-4, the notaries of the governments. So the genitive is describing the notaries. So, and again, genitive is the case of description. So I'm just doing that from stuff I've learned. I'm trying to think of how yeah, so the genitive would go under the nominative in his example. The noun, because it's in the same case.
Not under the nominative, this is under the...
Right. Well, if you look at the one at the bottom, it's the notaries of the governments validated the affidavits of the grafts for the deputies of the grand juries. So every one of those take a genitive,
Yeah.
because every one of them is describing those nouns, and that's what the genitive does. So the most basic genitive says it's marked by or characterized by. So the plea marked by or characterized by or belonging to the defendants is what genitive does. Okay? So if you put tone, you are correct. M. The judge heard the plea of the defendants, and that's pretty simple. Judge is what part of the sentence?
Subject.
Subject, and it's in what case?
No.
Nominative. Very good. So it's hey. And then finally, the judge viewed the evidence of the prosecution. So this is a neuter noun, and it's in what part of the sentence?
Direct object.
Direct object. So it's what case? Accusative. So you have ta,
Yes.
tau, omicron, tau, omicron.
Could you go over G again?
Yep.
I have that as dative.
It is dative. Toe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So G and H were both toe. One was masculine, one was neuter, but they're both the same word. Any other question?
What case is what we would call possessive?
That would be genitive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Genitive is the case of belonging to, or marked by, or characterized by. Okay, the next section, 4. Can you see the importance of learning the cases in the articles well? Yes. For a final practice, fill in all the blanks in the following sentences. Okay. The jury, neuter, so you have tau omicron, gave the verdict, which is the direct object, correct? So it's ton, to the judge, which is the indirect object, so it'd be what case?
Accusative.
Dative.
Yeah, okay.
Indirect object.
Yeah.
So it's te, dative feminine, of the court, and so this is again belonging to, or marked by, or characterized by, and so what case would this be? Genitive. So it would be to, t, tau, omicron, upsilon. Question on that?
No.
Okay. The judge, subject of the sentence, feminine case is nominative. Sentenced, yes, it's he, yes. Sentenced the defendants, so this is, they're receiving the action, so that's the direct object, and it's masculine plural, so it's tous. For the good, and so this is indirect object, dative, toe, of the public, masculine genitive, to, singular. Okay?
So of the public is genitive?
Genitive, yeah. Yeah, he calls it the adjective slot on page 3.3. Genitive is the adjective slot, which makes sense. If you're thinking Greek. All right. Yes. So number 5, these are all Greek words. So this is reviewing.
Those are all actual Greek words with the same meaning as?
Yes. They're Greek words that have been borrowed by English.
Those are fun.
So those are pretty simple. Pathos, dogma, atlas, cosmos, thermos, stigma, exodus, emphasis, dilemma. Number 6. Remember those breathing marks and diphthongs? Let's practice a bit so you won't forget. So, Lisa, A?
8.
8. And how did you spell that?
ATE or EIGHT?
Correct. And Bob?
8?
Hate.
Yeah.
Yep. I suppose it could be HAIGHT.
Yeah.
Hate Ashbury, remember that?
I'm just going to say that.
Yeah. And C, Lisa?
Hugh? Hugh.
Hugh.
Hugh. Okay.
Yeah.
I had who.
Yeah. That would be, if it was just an upsilon with a rough breather, it'd be who.
Okay.
but this is a hue sound. So there's two words for hue. H-U-E, the color, and H-E-W, the
Okay.
cutting down the tree. Do you hew a tree? What do you, or is that when you just throw something, you hew it, right?
I think it's the cut, isn't it?
Huh?
Like you said, cutting down the tree, isn't that what hue means?
What is it? What is hue? H-E-W.
We are on 6.
Yeah, 5 was just Greek words. Easy peasy. So, what is the word H-E-W?
Hue means,
To throw something?
no, it means
No, that's heave.
the hewer of
Cutting a tree?
cutting, yeah,
Okay,
hewer of wood, I think.
okay.
It's a verb.
All right. Okay, so D, do you see where we're at?
Yes.
Okay, do you have an answer for that one, David?
Ill.
Ill, or it could be eel,
Yeah.
because there's a long and a short. There's a long and a short sound. And the same thing for the next one. What do you have, Lisa?
Hill.
Hill, heel, and heel. It could be two kinds of heel. Bob, what do you got for F?
Here,
Hair. Hair. High. Higher.
I'm higher.
Higher. Yeah. Higher as in H-I-R-E and H-I-G-H-E-R. Higher. Yeah, hair. How would we say that in English? In Greek? How would we spell that Greek?
Same
Hair.
2 letters.
Hair. Well, it would just be hair. 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 Maybe just epsilon rho. That would be her. Hair. I don't know. Yeah, because this is a I sound, not an air, G, David.
Home.
Whom.
Whom.
Yeah, like
Yes.
whom. W-H-O-M.
I get H-U-M-E, which is not even a word now. It sounds,
Well, there's a Christian camp down in California called Hume Lake.
Yeah, heard of that.
Lisa, what do you got for H?
Toil.
Yeah. And David, I?
Queen.
Queen. There we go. Now some diagramming. 3 sentences here. Just some slots will remain blank. So what do you have across the? So for the first subject and those lines underneath it. Bob, you got that?
hey,
Okay, on the top line.
government, K.
Okay, hey, well, so it should be, the first line should be notary,
Yeah,
then underneath that would be hey, and then government, and then taste.
taste, yeah.
Taste,
Taste.
taste. Well, why did I say taste instead of tay?
I have taste also.
Taste. What makes us think that the government,
Because it's genitive, right?
it is genitive, yes, but we don't even know what the
Yeah.
oh, it says, assume all of the nouns are in the feminine gender. Okay, all right. The verb then is next, validated, and then, Lisa, what do you have for the direct?
Affidavit,
Okay,
tame, graft, taste.
very good. And David, what do you got for the indirect object there?
Deputy.
Trying to read your writing?
No, I didn't do this correctly, so.
Oh, okay. So it should say deputy, and then te, the deputy, and then grand jury and taste. So notice that under notary, you have a nominative, feminine nominative article, because it's a subject, it's in the nominative case, and then the direct object is in the accusative case, so you've got You've got the accusative article, and then under deputy, because it's in indirect object and it's in the dative case, you've got a dative article, and then the adjectives, government, graft, and grand jury, are all in the genitive case, and he just kept them all like that for us, so you could know nominative, notary, and validated verb and affidavit, accusative. Yes, so there you go. Now we're going to diagram the whole thing in Greek. Wow. So he lets you know that the first word is a verb. Well, now that you know a little bit about verbs, Euchariste, that's a third person singular ending, a. So this is a present active indicative, to give thanks. The man, ha anthropos, tu theou, the man of God, gives thanks doulan, the servant, to the servant for the father of the apostle.
For the servant of the apostle?
Well, no, because, let's see, the servant of the apostle? So how would we know if it's the father of the apostle or the servant of the apostle? I mean, yeah. Using the article as the indicator of the sentence slot of the noun it modifies. So, the man of God gives thanks to, gives the servant.
To God the Father?
No, there's no God in there. No, because, see, it's the man of God. Ha anthropos tu theou. Okay, so it's, the adjective is following the noun. And I think that's what he told us. Typically the adjective follows the noun. So I think it is the father of the apostle. And then lastly comes the direct object, the servant. So he thanks the servant for the father of the apostle. The man of God thanks the servant for the father of the apostle. Does that make sense? Huh?
Kind of.
Well,
So what is your translation of the whole sentence in English again?
the man of God thanks the servant for the father of the apostle. Because in this example, and most generally, the adjective follows the noun. So the man of God for the father of the apostle, the man of God thanks the servant. And we know that's true because it's in the accusative, and that has to be the direct object. So the servant receives the action of... Is this hard because it's in Greek?
Yeah.
It's kind of pushing you a little bit, isn't it? Yeah, because you've never learned these vocabulary words. But anthropos, you've heard that before, right?
Yes.
For man. Patri, sort of like father.
Yeah.
Pater. Apostolou, that's pretty easy. Doulon, that's one you might not know. Do you know the word doula?
I know that that's like one of the first Greek words that I ever learned when I was
Yeah.
in college, that in a fellowship group, that we were supposed to doulos, servant.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I don't even know why that was such a big deal in this particular group, but that was one of the first Greek words I learned.
But today, women who help other women have their babies, they're called doula.
Yeah, that's true.
A doula.
Yeah.
And that's the feminine form of this noun. Doulos is masculine, so. Okay, any question about that? Yay or nay? No? Okay. The next one looks like the same words, but they're in different orders. So, give thanks, or thanks. It's a singular verb, thanks, but the subject, who's the subject? Ha apostolos, which you can figure out as apostle, the apostle of the servant. So, because the adjective follows the noun, so we're not looking at word order here. The apostle of the servant thanks, and who does he thank?
The man of God.
Nope,
God.
It's God.
it's God. Ton theon. He thanks God of the Father, the God of the Father, for the man. The apostle of the servant thanks the God of the Father for the man.
For the man.
Huh?
For the man.
Yeah, because it's in the dative. So that's the only word that's the man. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it has to be for the man. Because ton theon, it wouldn't be the man of God, because God, the ton theon would have to be tu theou if it was the man of God. But because it's in the accusative, there's no other word that's in the accusative, and then it's followed by the genitive, so the God of the Father. You know, and you know, apostle can mean more than just apostolos can mean more than just apostle. It's somebody who's sent, right? So, but another way you could translate this ton theon tu patros is his Father's God, because sometimes you'll translate an article, the context will tell you that you need to make that article into a pronoun. So, but context would have to tell you that. So it could be his Father's God. So now we're not looking at necessarily Yahweh God. If it's his Father's God.
Okay.
It could be some other God. Okay? But that's just using the cases to help us know that nominative is the subject, accusative is the direct object, and dative is the indirect object, and genitive is the adjective that it describes it, and the adjective is following the noun. Okay? Now let's go to the next worksheet, number 4, which you did for the last week. Are you looking at the lions?
Yeah, that's fine.
So what do you have for 1, Lisa?
Pros.
Pros ton leonta. And how would you translate that?
Toward the lion.
Okay. Okay.
Pro to plus.
And how would you translate that?
That's before.
Before?
So that was before. I thought it might be with.
Pros would be translated with more. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, prostan theon. That's translated with. So pros could be with. You had toward. Yeah, so again, these prepositions, like English prepositions, can be used a variety of different ways.
Yeah, that's what had me confused about. I saw before as an option to go in there in that chart, but I wasn't sure if that meant before time-wise.
No, it's position.
It's position.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Pra could be in front of. You know.
If you look on the 2-5 chart, it's,
What does it say?
well, it's pra before, genitive.
Yeah. With the genitive. Okay. Yeah, but it actually in John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. It's prostan theon. So it's pros with the accusative, and it's with. So go figure. All right, Bob, what did you have for 3?
Peri,
Okay. And
which is around the line.
yeah, perimeter. And then David, number 4.
I've got meta to leontos and paraton leonta.
Yeah. And so how would you translate each of those?
They're with.
Both of them are with. So one is
First one's
with
genitive.
genitive and then accusative.
Right.
Yeah. So para. So para.
Or it's like beside.
Yeah. They're trying to think of the word for the Holy Spirit. Paraclete.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Paraclete has
Alongside.
para in it, yeah. Metastasis, metanoia, change. Yeah. So many of these are used in composition with other words. The prepositions are. Number 5. Who's next? Lisa?
Epi?
You have epi? How'd you spell it?
The epsilon p iota.
Okay, epi. I have ana.
I have epi.
You have epi? What do you have, David? What is
I want to find epi.
what is ana? I did this like 40 some years ago, so it's. What are we looking at? Oh yeah. Ana. So what case is this? This is an accusative case. Epi with the accusative is into.
Epi makes more sense for 10, but I couldn't find anything else for 5 that seems to be doing.
So epi with the accusative is on, motion. And I have ana. Where is ana? Ana with accusative is up. Why would I have up? Well, he's climbing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose. So.
That's what I found most challenging about this exercise, is deciding what's going on in the picture. Which preposition matches what's going on in the picture.
Yeah. Well, it's a learning exercise for sure. So, all right.
Or not.
Yeah, probably either one would work. He's going up. So, But motion, epi, yeah, that's probably better, epi, because it does show motion that he's going up. Yeah, I like your guys' is better. Okay, 6. Who's next? Huper.
What's that?
And that's above? Huper, over? Yeah, over with the accusative, right?
Okay, I got that one.
So he is over. Huper. And we have that in, where do we have that in English? Huper. Hooper. Hyper. That's it. That's where we get the English word hyper, because upsilon, in its genesis, in German, upsilon is called ypsilon. A y is called ypsilon. Did you know that? You didn't know? I thought you said you took German.
I did.
X ypsilon set, the XYZ in German. And the capital upsilon looks like a Y in Greek. Okay, 7. Ace.
Ace.
Into. Right? That's a very, very frequent preposition in English. As a matter of fact, it's interesting, in the Gospel of John, every place where it says to believe in Jesus, it uses ace.
Into. Believe into Jesus?
Yeah, but you don't. It would be awkward to translate it that way. But the Gospel of John, John does that. He always says ace, into.
What does Paul use for in Christ or in Him when he talks about us being in Christ?
I'm thinking it's N.
And
Yeah, I'd have to look, but I'm pretty sure it is. So number 8. Now that he's gone ace ton leonta, now he's in to leonti. Okay, and then 9. Ek, translated out of. Yep, there he comes out. This reminds me of when this summer, our youngest grandson, his name is Jonah, and he's 4. And my wife, Barbie, was showing him a video about the story of Jonah. And I asked him, he'll watch the video and then we ask questions afterwards to see about comprehension. And I said, so why do you suppose the whale spit out Jonah? He says, because he didn't taste good.
it's logical.
For 3 days, it didn't taste good.
Yeah, he had an upset tummy maybe, huh?
Yeah.
10, epi. So that is upon.
But that one is genitive and not.
Yes. Not, yeah. So on, contact. Okay, so a P with the accusative is on motion, and a P with the genitive is on contact, because genitive is the case of relationships. Accusative is the case of motion. Three more. 11. What do you got, David?
Kata.
Kata. Yep.
What is it?
Kata
Kata?
with the genitive?
Yeah.
Yeah. Down. And now in 12 he's having fun with the lion here. What is it, Lisa?
Hoopa?
Hupa. Translated
Under.
under. And lastly, David, what'd you have for
Apo.
apa?
Away from.
Away from. There he goes. So lots of fun with a lion.
Yes, yes.
I trust your adventure was a learning experience. So let's do a few more of these. Above the man, what did you get for that? David?
Huperton.
Huperton. above the man. And then after, we drop over to the next page here for B.
Meta, tus, men.
Okay, we'll do this page. Meta tus, after the men. Okay. Then up on the next page. Go ahead, Lisa.
Hupa,
Hupa, and the article?
taint.
Hupartain, and then going down, David, behind the girl.
I have apisotain
Taste.
or taste.
Yeah, it's feminine. Well, we assume it's feminine because it's a girl.
Yeah.
It's a good guess. Bob? D?
Soon toe, book.
With the book? Oh, you have soon. I could see how you might want with the book. What do I have? Meta.
There's two there that are the same. Two in a row.
Well, there's.
With the book, and then with the book, use a different preposition.
Oh, okay. Use a different preposition. So it could be meta, to, or soon to. Okay?
Yeah.
For D and E. Okay. Lisa, what do you have for G? Oh, do you have any question about that meta?
Yeah.
Yeah, meta with the accusative. No, meta says meta with the genitive.
What's the difference in actual meaning in English between meta and soon?
Soon is usually used more often in verbs. I think I see it like it's used in construction. They'll tag it right onto the front of a verb, so it gives the idea of doing something with somebody. Fellowship with. It might be koinonia soon, and it would be with. I think meta. I can't really give you a fine differentiation between that. I can think of situations where it'd be used, but I can't give you
With you in spirit as opposed to with you.
personally.
With.
Yeah, I don't know that I could make something quite that neat. I like to make things neat like that, but I don't know that it will do that. So G, who is doing that?
Auntie,
On T,
taste.
taste. Over against, okay? That's where we get our English anti.
Over against.
Yeah. Is that in the chart there, over against? On T. Instead of.
Compare.
You have huper, over against. Where did we?
Some of them I had to go back to the little chart on page 2.5. I think that's where I got auntie.
On T, over against with the genitive.
Yeah.
Instead of. Yeah.
Oh, I guess it's on the chart too, though.
Is it?
Oh, then it says
It says instead of.
instead of over against.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. So, but that's one of the meanings, over against. H,
Proton.
proton, tone. You said proton. Sounds good. Proton, neutron, proton. Yeah. Before the women. Lisa.
Ento. Oh wait, we're doing the next one.
I. Yeah.
Ento.
Ento. In the house. And then Bob, the last one, J.
Ace ton.
Ace tus. Ace ton. Into. I have ace tous.
I have it.
Yeah, houses, because it's plural. Masculine plural.
Oh, that's right.
Got to mix it up a little bit there. All right. Wow, there was a lot here, wasn't there? Congratulations for doing all this. How would you translate the following? After each article, state the gender, number, and case that has been used. With the.
With
Soon to, masculine, neuter, singular, dative. Okay? Okay, I did the first one. Who's going to do the next one?
Repair ton
Uh-huh.
of the masculine singular accusative.
Correct. Next. Bob? Do you have it? You didn't get that far?
I finished it 2. I did 2, 3, and 4.
Oh, okay. C. Para, like parallel. Beside. Beside the, and you know what case that is? Dative, singular, either masculine or neuter. Lisa, D?
Meta, tone, with masculine, feminine, or neuter, plural genitive.
Correct. E. Ace tous.
To the masculine plural accusative.
Correct. So F would be meta ta, after the, neuter singular accusative. Why wouldn't it be nominative singular accusative? Because the ta is nominative.
But it's also accusative, right?
Because no prepositions.
Oh, I see what you, okay, yeah, right. I figured that out.
No
I
preposition.
forgot that, but I did figure that out.
Yeah.
I'm still stuck on, you said for F that it's, what did you translate it as?
After the.
After the, not with the.
Oh, I did say after the. Is it
Meta.
after with the accusative? Yeah,
It is after, okay.
yeah, because genitive is with.
Yep.
And again, if you just think broadly, genitive is relationships, and accusative is direction or position. That helps when you have a word that's used with a preposition is used with 2 different cases. And G, entice, sounds like a feminine plural dative, exactly. In the. And H, apates.
Away from the,
Uh-huh.
feminine singular genitive.
All right. Awesome, awesome. Now, verbs. Using the chart on page 413 and the notes of lesson 4, answer the following questions. Oh, so we're looking at, in John 3:16, the English word loved is a translation of the Greek word agapesin. Agapesin. In the older traditional terms, this form is the third singular aorist active indicative. There we go, aorist active indicative, third singular. Using the chart on page 413 and the notes of lesson 4, answer the following questions. What is its person? Third person. What?
I'm totally lost on this. I looked and looked and looked and looked and looked at this, and I had no idea how to answer any of the questions. So how do you get third person out of that? Other than the fact that
He
it
tells
says.
you.
Is that what you did? You just went on, I thought maybe we were supposed to figure out from the word. Other than what he puts in quotes, I had no idea.
He says, using the chart on 413, and there it is. So now he's teaching you how to do it the old way, the traditional way, the way every book you'll ever read says, present active indicative third person singular. Not Paris, it's aorist active indicative third singular. So aorist, so you're looking at the chart and it says aorist. Well, you're going to know it's third person because he says it's third person. What is its number? It's singular because he says it's singular. What is its voice? Active. He's already said that. So he's trying to get you to translate that. Now he wants to know what is his aspect. Now he hadn't told you what the aspect is, but he told you that it was aorist active indicative third person singular. So going back to this chart, what is it?
Punctiliar.
It's punctiliar because aorist is only in punctiliar. Okay? And it also tells you that it's in the past because it's indicative. Because time is only relative, is only found in the indicative. Did you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And there's another thing to notice about this. Do you remember we mentioned an augment last time? Mm-hmm. Where was that? Page... augment. Where's an augment? I know we mentioned it. Past time indicator. There it is, the bottom of page 410. When you put a Greek epsilon in front of an indicative verb, you throw it into the past time. That's called an augment. Doesn't he tell you that anywhere here? I thought for sure we mentioned it somewhere. Anyway, that's an augment. But what something happens kind of interesting if you have a verb that begins with a vowel. So agapao begins with a vowel, and now we're going to put an augment onto that. You don't put an epsilon in front of it. You combine the epsilon and the alpha, and it becomes an eta. So you see the verb a comes from agape, agapao.
So this is a form of agape, right?
It's a form of agapao. The agape is the noun, agapao is the verb.
Okay. So they've changed the alpha to it.
The alpha is changed to an eta because it's added an epsilon. So those two, epsilon and alpha, together contract into an eta. And we actually talked about that, I think, in the first lesson on page 17. But I don't see it there. Those are the contraction of vowels, that little chart. But I'm looking for an epsilon and an alpha together that make an eta, and I don't see it. So it doesn't work there. Anyway, but that's what happened. That's because there has to be a reason why that alpha changed to an eta, and the reason that it changed is because an epsilon was added to it, and it contracted into an eta, or lengthened into an eta, I guess is what we would say.
So did you say that verb is aorist?
Yes, he says that right here. He calls it aorist active indicative third singular. So then the question E, what is its mood? And he told us that already, it's indicative. Do you ask this sixth question? And is that what do you say, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. What is this question? And what is the sixth question?
What is the time?
What is its time? And if your answer is yes, check one of the following. Past, present, or future. Well, because it's aorist, it's past. And because it has an augment, it's past. So there you go. We went over all the lessons, the worksheets, and we still have a little more time. I don't even have a clock here in front of me, 8:01. All right, so let's go to page 5.1 and look at syntax. So the first paragraph here says lexical studies, we call them word studies. So lexical is what we look up in a lexicon, you know, the words, right? And we call those word studies. And we investigate the meanings of words in and of themselves, that is the stems. So what does the root word mean? Syntax studies, on the other hand, show how words relate to each other through the grammatical principles and by means of prefixes and suffixes. So syntax, so how do these words relate to each other? And it's another word for grammar. So syntax. So words have affinities towards other words and thereby form clusters. I'm just going to read through this because I want to explain it as we go. We will modify, which modify other words. These clusters then form phrases, clauses, or sentences. So here's a great example. In the English cluster, the very handsome young man, there's a single word, man, with modifier words, an article, an adverb, and two adjectives, which give more information about him. Okay, so you see that? The article, an adverb is very, handsome, young, are two adjectives. So the modifiers belong to the word they modify. The nucleus of the cluster could be the direct object of a sentence like the freshman girl saw the very handsome young man. So man is the direct object because he receives the action of being seen by the girl. Words can even cluster around the verb, as she wanted very badly to meet him. She wanted, and so very badly are two adverbs that modify wanted. Okay? So this is grammar, right? That we're talking about. Very badly belongs to the verb wanted. The same Greek constructs modifiers in exactly the same way. The cluster might be connected to the rest of the sentence by a preposition, as she wanted to be noticed by the handsome young man. By connects and implies a relationship between the sentence and the handsome young man. The Greek constructs it the same way. So we would call that a prepositional phrase, by. And then sometimes the cluster includes some action or state, but is insufficient to stand alone. In the sentence, she wondered if he was going steady with anyone. The italicized clause has some action to it. His humor is amazing, perhaps too much, but is not complete in itself. You can't just say, if he was going steady with anyone. Can't stand by itself. It's got to be, it's what we call a dependent clause in English. There are a variety of clauses in the Greek. Some of the principal ones are, so this is kind of fun here, a relative clause. She wondered who he was. So it starts with a relative pronoun, who. And we have a relative pronoun in Greek. And these are all Greek clauses in English for us. Conditional, and if he had noticed her. If tells you it's conditional. And there's 4 different kinds of conditional sentences, clauses in Greek. Purpose. She signed up for Greek in order to sit near him. So, in order tells you that that's a purpose clause. But he signed up for Hebrew so that her plan was foiled. That's a result clause, so that. And it's the words that they start with give clue. In order that tells you purpose, so that tells you result. Okay? A participial clause. Saturday morning she was embarrassed because he saw her wearing her curlers. There's actually a story in all of these clauses here. So, wearing is a participle. In English, anything that ends with an ing is a participle. So that's a participial clause. And then an indirect quote, she said to herself that would finish it for her. That would finish it for her. Indirect quote, she said to herself that would finish it. Infinitive, imagine her surprise when he stopped her and asked to escort her to the freshman mixer. So, to escort is an infinitive. Infinitives in English are always to be, to go. And some words in Greek naturally require an infinitive to complete the thought. And the same is true in English. Can I think of one right now? No, I can't. But I can't think of one right off the bat. We'll come to them. And then the temporal clause, this began something which she hoped would last until death do them part. So until is temporal. Okay? The Greek sentence is more complex than the English, involving a considerable amount of elaboration, especially with participial clauses. The classical Greek was even more elaborate than biblical Greek. Now here's an interesting differentiation between Greek and Hebrew. Greek is essentially hypotactic, whereas the Semitic languages are paratactic. An hypotactic sentence has one main clause and is embellished by subordinate clauses. So here's a lengthy example.
So what is the paratactic?
Well, he's going to tell us that down here at the bottom of the page. But let's look at this Greek, this clause here, this sentence. This is one sentence with 100 words. Already having noticed the handsome young man, and wondering who he was and if he had noticed her, and having had her plans to sign up for Greek in order to sit near him foiled by his signing up for Hebrew, and although she thought her chances were finished with him because he embarrassed her by catching her in her curlers on Saturday morning, she was surprised when he stopped her to ask if he could escort her to the freshman mixer, the start of something which she hoped would last until death do them part. Okay, so that's one sentence. And if you've ever studied Ephesians chapter 1, you know the first 14 verses are one sentence. Okay?
So it's not just that Paul likes run-on sentences, it's inherent in the Greek.
Yeah, it's part of Greek. Now, here's a fun thing. Look at that sentence I just read. Tell me the main verb.
Was surprised.
You already read this.
She was.
Did you just?
Surprised.
Huh?
Was surprised?
Yes. Did you already read this?
No.
I already read that and
No.
Oh, okay.
was looking for the verb.
Yeah. Yes, definitely it was surprised. So, but there's a lot of participles in there. But so if this was in the New Testament, you would want to find where's the main verb, because you want to be able, when you're trying to understand what it means, you got to follow the flow of thought of the author. So you got to find, well, what's the main verb, because everything else is dependent on that. So did I talk with you about? I think maybe I did, about the Great Commission. Go into all the world and preach and make disciples of all. Yeah, I talked about that, didn't I? Mm-hmm. Yeah. The main verb in that is make disciples. And there's 3 participles in there: going, baptizing, and teaching. So if you want to understand what that means, you don't just take it in word order. You go first and say, what's the main verb here? And then what are the participles that are dependent? Because those are dependent clauses or dependent phrases on the main verb. So this is important to find out when you're looking at syntax, where's the main verb. So the Greek takes this 100-word sentence in stride without batting an eye. So a paratactic sentence joins independent clauses with and. She had already noticed the handsome young man and wondered if he had noticed her and planned to sign up for Greek because she wanted to sit next to him. But, and or but, either one works. But her plans were foiled because he signed up for Hebrew, and Saturday morning she thought it was finished for her because he caught her wearing curlers, but he stopped her and asked if he could escort her to the freshman mixer, and she hoped this would be the start of something which would last until death would them part. So in Hebrew, as a matter of fact, there's no difference between and but. Only context will tell you. You know, and it's just a vav, one letter in front of a word, and that's an and. So, and in Hebrew, there's one letter in front of a word, and that's a the. A whole lot easier than Greek. There's only one the, just like in English, only it's just one letter, like an A. And you just tack it onto the front, and it's the, or you tack on a vav in front of a word, and it's an and or a but, depending on. And that's kind of interesting. It's interesting when you've studied that and you're listening to somebody preach, and they'll say, well, this says but here, not and. I'm going, okay, that's all interpretation. It's the same letter in Hebrew. The Semitic languages would do it this way. The New Testament, though written in Greek, was written by men of a Semitic culture and language. In addition, the Greek Old Testament, having been translated directly from Hebrew, was their guide in theological truth. Understand that the writers of the New Testament, for the most part, were using the Septuagint. And you can tell when they make a quote, you go back and check it in the Septuagint, and it's word for word the same as the Septuagint in Greek. And so you can say, okay, and then other times you'll find that it's not word for word, and it appears as though it's a translation that they did independently from the Hebrew into the Greek. And so it's a little different. So what he's saying here is you need to understand some things about Hebrew to interpret the Greek New Testament because it was written by Hebrews. It was written by Jews. And he'll give you a couple examples here. So the sentences in biblical Greek is more paratactic than a sentence in classical Greek, but more hypertactic than a sentence in the Semitic language. So it's kind of a marriage of both of those kinds you'll find. So it's amazing how much the meaning of an English sentence changes when the order of the words is changed. The Greeks would say, we talk in a straitjacket. They played fast and loose with the location of words in a sentence. They even put a main verb between a noun and its modifiers. In spite of their seeming lack of order, they were very particular about the position of a word, of the article, and of any other modifiers of a word. This is very tricky and very important. So here's an example. The good man, ha agathos anthropos, means the good man. This is the attributive position. And so the article, the order is article, adjective, noun. That's called the attributive position. Then there's the predicate position. Agathos ha anthropos means the man is good. Okay? And all we've done is change word order. And we've added the verb is, because that's how it was meant. Okay? So that's important to understand. And I think that's in John 1:1. Well, we've got that here. Page.
So where are we getting the is that?
It's understood.
What?
It's understood. So
How do we know it's not understood like the man was good?
Let's look at John 1:1. It's on page 19. Now you've learned enough Greek here that we can translate this, right? In the beginning was the Word. In beginning, arche, ein, the Word, halagos. And halagos, and the Word was, so ein is the past tense of eimi, and that's was. And the Word was proston theon, with God. And God was the Word. But you need to be, the subject is indicated by the article. The Word was God is how it's translated. It does have the verb in there though, was in this case, but it could just be, and that might be the difference between is and was. Bob, that might be the answer to you, because if it just said and theos halagos, it would be the Word is God. Okay, but it's got ein added in there, so it tells you that it's was God. But that's an example of
And aim there is the verb? Was?
Yeah. It's 3 times in that verse, and then it's in the next verse. So it's in a bunch of verses there. Was. Yeah. So it's one of those highly irregular ones. This is the lexical form. Eimi. And this is aorist. So it changes really radically. But anyway, there's an example of the attributive and the predicate position. The article always comes before the word it is making definite. Back to page 5.3. But not necessarily immediately before. Sometimes modifiers belonging to the word come in between. The adjective usually follows the word to which it belongs. Okay? But it's not always that way, but usually. A very few unaccented particles are so self-effacing that they refuse to start a sentence or clause, and so always seem to be out of place by a few notches. Yeah, I thought I'd see an example here. But those words like men, de, and te, those usually will take second position, even though when we translate them, they go in first. So de is like but. So, but we would put but at the beginning of the clause, but in Greek it's the second word in the clause. Yes?
Back to the good man. Why wouldn't you say anthropos agathos, where the adjective follows the noun? Wouldn't that be an acceptable alternate way of writing that?
No. If it was going to modify it, it would be ha. That's a rough breather. Ha anthropos. So much fun to write these. Ha agathos. Agathos. That would be the good man.
Why is there two
That would be
another article?
because that's the way they do it. This is an adjective, and it's modifying this. Okay? So if you didn't have this, it would be the man is good. But with this in here, it's just simply the good man. The man, the good one.
Yeah.
Okay? think that's my answer to your question. Without that other one. Because it would be, because again, the adjective can go in a variety of places. And sometimes you'll have an article like ton, and then you'll have a prepositional phrase like a couple of the words here, and then you've got your noun that goes with this article. So you have the article, a prepositional phrase, which is used as an adjective, and then the noun. They'll pack a lot of things in between the article and the noun. So sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's like that. The man, the good one, or let's see if I can come up with an example. The in the spirit man, So they'll make the prepositional phrase into an adjective in between the article and the noun. But like he says, the article always comes before the word it's making definite, but not necessarily immediately before. Sometimes modifiers belonging to the word come in between. And those modifiers can be a lot of different kinds of words. Emphasis. The most important part of the sentence is put first. The secondary emphatic position is at the last. What is not so important is buried in the middle of the sentence. The Greek is not nearly as limited as the English. Usually the order is verb, subject, and direct object, or subject, verb, and direct object. Usually. As far as word order is concerned, and compared to English, the Greek language is really a swinging language. A swinging language. How are we doing for time? We're almost done. Concord. Do you remember concord? We were talking about pronouns, second sentence there. Pronouns must agree with their antecedents. Do you know what an antecedent is? It's the word that the pronoun is replacing. Okay? So the pronouns must agree with their antecedents in gender and number. So that helps you know. Well, what is this him referring to? Well, if you can match it up with an antecedent that's the same gender and number, then you know which one it's referring to, or it, or whatever it may be. If there's a breach of concord, the next paragraph, the Bible student should make an effort to understand every breach of concord which he finds in the New Testament. There must have been a reason for it. So sometimes there's a breach. As you know, every rule has its exception. And so if there's an exception to this rule about concord, there's going to be a good reason for it. And it's probably, he says an exegetical point probably turns on that very breach. So.
It could just be a mistake. Well, can you write a whole book and not make one grammatical error?
If God was helping me, I guess. If it was the breath of God. Idioms. Idioms. There's no way to understand an idiom or to be able to pick out an idiom, because we use idioms in our language and don't even think about it until somebody points it out to us. We go, oh, well, that's an idiom. For instance, if I've told you once, I've told you a million times, that's an idiomatic, or he's pulling my leg, that's an idiomatic expression. So there's a lot of things that we use that are peculiar to our language and our culture. I was reading a book on interpreting the Bible. I don't think I've mentioned this to you, but we use an expression, 6 of one, half dozen of another, which means, the same thing. But the author of this book had been a missionary in, I don't remember what country in Africa, and in their native language, in that particular people, they would say they had an idiomatic expression that translated comes out the difference between 20 and 21, which means exactly the same thing as 6 of one, half dozen of another. Well, in English, that wouldn't make any sense at all, because we would say the difference between 20 and 21,
There is a difference.
there is a difference.
It's not the same.
Right. But in that particular language and culture, if they said it's the difference between 20 and 21, no difference in their mind. Okay? So, and it's hard to explain, pulling my leg. I mean, how do you explain that to somebody? Where did that expression even come from? So about the only way you're going to be able to know idiomatic expressions is to find somebody who knows the language better than you do, and read what they have to say about it. So one of the things that's idiomatic about Greek that they like to do is they like to take a verb and a noun that are the same root and put them together, like he lived life, and they'll use words like that. So that's common in Greek. And then up here at the top of page 5, he's talking about how there's some idiomatic uses from Hebrew that have crept into Greek, and he uses the example of poetic parallelisms in that second paragraph on page 5.5, the second half of it. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. The writer is saying the same thing two different ways. Okay. He uses two different words and figures, but the exegetical thrust should not be in the direction of discovering what each has in contrast, but what both are saying in common. So he leads me beside still waters, he makes me lie down in green pastures, are two ways of saying the same thing. And that, if you've studied any of the Old Testament poetry at all, you know that's what they do. And so he gives an example in Matthew 5:45, for he makes his sun rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust, is just two ways of saying the same thing. So when we're interpreting the New Testament, we need to be careful that we understand that that's a Hebraism, is what I would call it, is that poetic parallelism. Does that make sense? Okay. So then he just says, Greek was big in rhetoric, but not so much for New Testament Greek, because of this combination with Semitic influence and Greek, those two coming together. So the last paragraph on page 5-6 says, when reading the letters of the New Testament, one should keep in mind that they were written like letters ought to be written, following a chain of consciousness more than a formal outline. Some interpreters of the Scriptures like to take those and try to, fit them into a form that was current in the day, outside of the Scriptures. But it's difficult to do that because these guys were Hebrews. And so it doesn't match something that Greeks did as precisely as some people might think it does. And so he warns and just says following a chain of consciousness is really what's most important. And I've found that to be true myself in the 30 or 40 years that I've been studying the Bible. Is I look for what I call a flow of thought. to try to understand what the author is saying. That the author didn't take a bunch of phrases and throw them up against the wall and then write down what came out, but there's a flow of thought in it, and there, Paul will go off on a rabbit trail in how he's talking, and then boom, he's back to where he was, and you have to learn some of those peculiarities about some of the authors of the New Testament, but I'm always looking for a flow of thought, and I think that's one of the things that he's emphasizing here, is that yes, there are some things that are peculiar about Greek syntax, and we need to be sensitive to the Hebraisms that are in there as well, and then make sure that you're trying to follow the author's flow of thought and when he's talking. So that's kind of a broad sweep of what he's saying in this chapter. Now, in the worksheet, he's going to, wow, it's falling apart. In the worksheet, he's going to take you, and you're going to need a Greek interlinear to do this worksheet. So if you don't have one, use one online. On the first page of the worksheet, he says, in the following exercise, you will observe some example of word order and changes, and then try to discover the significance of those changes in word order. As an aid to your memory, write down the two ways in which an author could emphasize a word or thought which we have just mentioned above. What are those two? Oh, there it is right there. Placing a word at the beginning of a clause, or making a variation from the normal word order. So he's going to take you through, and this should be a pretty fun exercise. He's going to take you through some passages where he has you read in English, and then zero in on one word, one verse in the interlinear, and ask you some questions about for instance, what word is out of order, and why do you think that word is out of order? And in most, I think both of these, let me just see that for a minute, please. So, for instance, on the bottom of page 5.2, the worksheet 5.2, he says, look at Romans 5, verse 6, and Romans 5:6. Says, for when we were yet without strength, in due time Christ died for the ungodly. Okay, and in this particular version, this is the Nestle-Aland Greek text, and so is that one, and so I don't know what versions you...
Stevens, 1550.
Oh, it's Stevens.
I believe that's...
Eusebius?
I think this is it Stevens or St. Stevens, 1550?
Oh, okay.
Which is...
Well, 1550 was Eusebius, the Textus Receptus, yeah. So, but anyway, whichever Greek text you have, hopefully, like this one, it actually has some little numbers so that you can see how they've taken and changed the word order.
Yeah, mine has that.
Does it? Okay. And so then he's going to ask the question, well, which one seems to be out of order, and then why do you think that's the case? And so it'll be some lessons more on just kind of learning that, and then what do you learn from that, he's asking, and so he's asking you to do a little interpretation in some of these. So I think it'll be a fun exercise. I did notice on page 5, where W53, number 8 there, read 1 Corinthians 2, 6-13 in English, it says. And then he note, the English word for may not have been placed under the Greek word for in your interlinear, but be sure that you place it there. Well, it just so happens that the Greek text I was using was not this one, but it was another one, and there is no word for in my Greek text, but it had the word but instead. And because it's a variant reading, it's a little different reading, and so you might not find exactly the same thing. For instance, one of those in the link that I sent you is the NLT translation, interlinear, which I thought was a pretty interesting one. And so it gives you an idea of how they translated that. And, some, like in one of the examples he has, one of the letters is not even translated. It was an and they, in the NLT, they just left that out and didn't translate that word.
Is that New Living?
New Living Translation.
Is that a paraphrase or is that an actual?
No, it's a translation. Yeah. So the First Living Bible was a paraphrase, but the New Living is a translation. It's completely new work. So